Karn lay on the cold, muddy ground, her body aching with pain. The battle was over. The Tsari army had retreated, leaving behind the wounded and the dead. She tried to move, but her leg was broken, and a deep wound on her side bled slowly. She knew what this meant. The Tsari did not take back the weak. In their culture, a warrior who could not fight was useless. They were abandoned, left to die alone. It was the way of their people, and she had always believed in it. Until now. Her sharp ears twitched at the sound of footsteps. Someone was coming. Was it a scavenger? An enemy soldier? She reached for her blade, but her fingers were weak. Her vision blurred as she tried to focus. The figure stepped closer. It was not another Tsari. It was something worse. A human. Karen bared her fangs in a weak snarl. The humans had fought against the Tsari in this war. They were strange creatures, soft-skinned, with blunt claws and no natural weapons. And yet, they were dangerous. They did not fight like the Tsari, who relied on strength and honor. No, humans used tricks. They were unpredictable, and that made them deadly. The human crouched beside her. He was tall, with dark hair and strange brown eyes. His uniform was torn, and his armor had scratches and burns. He had fought hard in this battle, yet his face did not show anger or cruelty. Instead, he looked concerned. Karen growled, "Leave me." Her voice was weak, but her pride remained strong. The human did not leave. Instead, he pulled a small device from his pack. A medkit. Karen's eyes widened in shock. Why would a human waste medical supplies on an enemy? "You're in bad shape," the human said. His voice was calm, steady. "I don't know if you understand me, but if I don't help, you're going to die." Karen's pride screamed at her to refuse. She was a warrior. If she could not fight, she did not deserve to live. That was the Tsari way. But the pain was too much. The cold was creeping into her bones. She wanted to live. The human took out a syringe and injected something into her arm. Within seconds, warmth spread through her body. The pain faded, and her breathing became easier. "What are you doing?" she rasped. "Keeping you alive," the human replied simply. He wrapped a bandage around her side and pressed a healing patch against her wound. Karen stared at him in disbelief. "Why?" The human shrugged. "Why not?" Her mind raced. Did he plan to take her as a prisoner? Use her for information? No, that didn't seem right. His hands were careful, not cruel. His expression was not that of a victor gloating over a fallen enemy. He was just helping. She let her head fall back against the ground, exhausted. "What's your name?" the human asked. She hesitated before answering. "Karen." The human gave her a small smile. "I'm Ethan. Looks like you're stuck with me now, Karen." She didn't understand this human. But for the first time in her life, someone had stayed when she was weak. Maybe, just maybe, humans were not as weak as the Tsari believed. Karen drifted between wakefulness and unconsciousness. The warmth from the human's medicine dulled her pain, but exhaustion still clung to her like a heavy blanket. She felt movement. Someone was carrying her. Her ears twitched. The sound of footsteps, slow but steady. The scent of metal, blood, and dirt filled her nose. Ethan. She barely knew him, but she knew one thing. This was wrong. A Tsari warrior did not accept help from an enemy. She had been taught that weakness meant death. And yet here she was, alive, because a human had refused to leave her behind. Karen forced her eyes open. The dark sky above was filled with smoke, the ground littered with the wreckage of war. The battlefield stretched far, the bodies of fallen warriors, both human and Tsari, scattered like broken dolls. "Put me down," she rasped. Ethan didn't stop walking. "If I do that, you'll die. So, no." His voice was steady, almost casual, as if carrying a wounded alien through a war-torn wasteland was normal. Karen hated it. She hated feeling helpless. She shifted in his arms, baring her fangs. I do not need. Aha, Ethan interrupted, adjusting his grip on her. That's why you're bleeding all over me, right? Karen growled, but had no strength to fight. She was too tired, too weak. She hated being weak. They moved toward the ruins of an old human outpost. The walls were half destroyed, but it still provided some shelter from the cold wind. Ethan carefully set her down on a patch of dry ground, pulling off his jacket and rolling it up as a makeshift pillow for her head. Rest, he said simply. Karen eyed him warily. You are keeping me alive. Why? Ethan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. I dunno. Maybe I'm just stubborn. He gave her a small, lopsided grin. Humans do that sometimes. She didn't understand. That Sari left the weak behind. It was logical. It was the way of survival. But humans? They were different. Ethan pulled out his medkit again, checking her wound. His hands were gentle but firm, his touch careful. He didn't flinch at the sight of her injuries, didn't show disgust at her alien form. You'll be okay, he murmured. Just gotta stop the bleeding. Karen narrowed her eyes. You fight for your kind, yet you help an enemy. Ethan's hand stilled for a moment. Then he sighed. You're not my enemy right now. You're just someone who needs help. His words made no sense. The Terry did not think this way. You were either strong or weak, alive or dead, warrior or nothing. And yet, here was this human, breaking every rule she had ever known. Karen studied him as he worked. He was injured too. A gash on his arm, a bruise on his cheek, yet he focused on her first. What if I betray you? She asked suddenly. Ethan chuckled. Then I'd feel really stupid, huh? She blinked. He was joking. He should be threatening her, keeping a weapon pointed at her, demanding information about the Tsari forces. Instead, he was sitting here, laughing, as if they were not two enemies from different worlds. Humans were strange. Karen felt exhaustion pull at her again, but this time, she did not fight it. For the first time in her life, someone had stayed. Someone had chosen to help instead of abandoning her, and that was something she did not know how to understand. As sleep claimed her, she heard Ethan's voice, quiet but firm. You're not dying today, Karen. And for some reason, she believed him. Karen woke to the crackling sound of a fire. The scent of smoke and something unfamiliar lingered in the air. Her body ached, but the sharp pain had dulled. She was still alive. Slowly, she turned her head. Ethan sat a few feet away, poking at a small fire with a metal rod. A thin pot sat over the flames, steam rising from it. His helmet was off, revealing messy brown hair. His uniform was dirty and torn, but he didn't seem to care. He noticed her movement and grinned. Welcome back, sleepyhead. Karen frowned. How long? Was I unconscious? About half a day, Ethan said, stirring the pot. You lost a lot of blood. I had to stitch you up. Her ears twitched. A human had stitched her wounds. The idea was unsettling, but she was alive. Karen tried to sit up, but her muscles protested. She let out a frustrated growl. Ethan quickly moved closer, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. Easy, he said. You're not gonna be running any marathons anytime soon. She didn't know what a marathon was, but she understood his meaning. She was still weak, helpless. I hate this, she muttered. Ethan chuckled. Yeah, getting shot and abandoned kinda sucks. He pulled back, sitting cross-legged beside her. But hey, you're still here. That's something. Karen watched him carefully. Humans were confusing. He had no reason to help her, no reason to treat her as anything more than an enemy. Her people would never have done the same. Her stomach growled, breaking the silence. She stiffened in embarrassment, but Ethan just laughed. Well, that answers my next question. He grabbed a small metal bowl and poured some of the steaming liquid into it. Here, it's not fancy, but it's warm. Karen hesitated before taking the bowl. The smell was strange, but not unpleasant. She sniffed it cautiously. "What is it?" she asked. "Soup," Ethan said. "Mostly just water, dried meat, and some ration packs. Nothing special, but it'll keep you alive." She stared at the bowl. Sari warriors did not accept food from others. To take food was to admit weakness, but she was already weak, and the human had saved her life. Swallowing her pride, she took a small sip. The taste was different. Salty, a little bitter, but strangely comforting. Ethan smiled. "Not bad, huh?" She huffed. "It is. Acceptable." He laughed again, shaking his head. "You remind me of my old squad mate. Tough as nails, but wouldn't admit when something was good." Karen tilted her head. "Where is your squad now?" The smile faded from Ethan's face. He poked at the fire, eyes distant. "Gone," he said quietly. "Killed in the last ambush. I'm the only one left." Karen felt an unfamiliar tightness in her chest. She knew loss. Every Tsari warrior did. But humans, they felt it differently. The Tsari accepted death as a part of war. They did not mourn. They did not grieve. But Ethan did. "I see," she said softly. "You stayed behind. Because of them." Ethan nodded. Didn't feel right leaving them behind, even if they were all ready. He trailed off, shaking his head. "Doesn't matter now." Karen stared at him. His words were strange to her. He stayed behind for those who were already gone. He risked his life, not for survival, not for victory, but out of loyalty. That was not the Tsari way, but it was the human way. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled, the wind whispered through the ruins, and for the first time, Karen didn't feel completely alone. After a moment, Ethan spoke again. "What about you? Any family waiting for you back home?" Karen stiffened. "No. Tsari warriors do not have families. We are raised in war camps, trained from birth to fight. We live to serve the Dominion." Ethan frowned. "So, no parents, no siblings." She shook her head. "I had a hatchmate once. We trained together. He was strong. He fought well." Ethan leaned forward. "What happened to him?" She swallowed. "He was injured in battle. Left behind." Ethan's expression darkened. "Your own people abandoned him." "It is the way of the Tsari," she said, but her voice was quieter this time. Ethan shook his head. "That's not the way. That's just wrong." Karen didn't respond. She wasn't sure what to say. She had never questioned the Tsari ways before. She had always believed in strength, in survival. But now she was alive, because a human had refused to leave her behind. The fire flickered between them, casting long shadows against the broken walls. Karen sighed. "I do not understand your people, Ethan." Ethan grinned. "Yeah. Well, you're not the first alien to say that." She gave him a tired look, but for some reason, she felt lighter. For the first time, she wondered if the Tsari were wrong about humans. Maybe they were not the weak ones after all. Karen's wounds were healing, but her thoughts were restless. For the past 2 days, she had been stuck with Ethan in the ruins of the human outpost. Her body still ached, but the human's strange medicine had worked. She was stronger now, strong enough to walk, though not fast enough to escape if she needed to. Not that she had tried. Something was different. She had expected Ethan to treat her like a prisoner. Or perhaps, after she had healed enough, he would leave her behind. That was the Tsari way. But instead, the human acted as if they were, what was the word he had used? Teammates. Karen didn't understand it. Even now, Ethan sat near the fire, cleaning his weapon while humming some strange human tune. His relaxed posture confused her. How could he trust her so easily? She was a Tsari warrior, an enemy. If their roles were reversed, she would have already left him to die. She shifted uncomfortably. The thought didn't sit well with her anymore. Ethan glanced at her. "You okay? You look like you're thinking too hard." Karen let out a small growl. I do not understand you, human. He smirked. You keep saying that, but I think you're starting to. She narrowed her eyes. You saved me. You gave me food. You shared warmth. And yet, I was your enemy. Why? Ethan sighed, setting his rifle aside. Because that's what we do. Karen frowned. That is not an answer. He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. Look, I get it. That Sari don't help the weak, right? If someone falls behind, they're left to die. But humans, we don't work that way. We don't just fight for survival. We fight for each other. Karen studied his face. There was no hesitation in his words. No doubt. This, loyalty, she said slowly. It makes you weak. Ethan chuckled. No, it makes us strong. She shook her head. Strength is being able to stand alone, to fight without needing others. Ethan gave her a long look. You really believe that? She opened her mouth, then stopped. Did she? All her life, she had been taught that strength was everything. That to depend on another was to admit weakness. And yet, she was alive because a human had refused to leave her behind. She had seen the way Ethan spoke about his fallen squadmates. They weren't just soldiers to him. They were family. Her own people did not have such things. They fought together, yes, but only out of necessity. Once the battle was over, the weak were forgotten. A strange feeling twisted in her chest. Ethan stretched and stood up. Come on, he said. You need to move around. Sitting too long isn't good for recovery. Karen hesitated, then slowly got to her feet. Her legs were unsteady, but she managed to stay upright. Ethan grinned. Look at that. You won't even need me to carry you soon. She scowled. You should not have carried me in the first place. Yeah. He waved a hand. But I did. And I'd do it again. Karen opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. There was no point. The human was stubborn. Instead, she followed him as he led her outside the ruined outpost. The battlefield stretched before them, silent now. Smoke still rose in the distance, but the fighting had long since moved on. Karen's eyes flicked to Ethan. What now? He shrugged. We find a way out of here. She frowned. Your people. They will take me as a prisoner. Ethan scratched the back of his head. Maybe. Maybe not. If they see you with me, they might not shoot first. He smirked. Might. Karen did not like those odds. You could leave me here, she said carefully. Go back to your people. I can survive on my own. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You really think I'd do that? She didn't answer. Because she already knew the truth. He wouldn't. Humans didn't leave people behind. The thought unsettled her. But at the same time, it warmed her in a way she did not understand. Ethan patted her shoulder. Come on, tough kitty. Let's get moving. She growled at the nickname, but for some reason, she didn't feel the usual anger. As they walked, a single thought lingered in her mind. Maybe the humans were not the weak ones after all. Karen walked beside Ethan, her body still aching but stronger than before. The two of them moved carefully through the ruined battlefield, avoiding the open ground where scavenger drones still circled above. The silence of the wasteland was unsettling, broken only by the distant crackle of burning wreckage. Ethan moved with ease, his human eyes scanning for danger, his rifle held loosely but ready. Karen could tell he had done this before. He was not just a soldier, he was a survivor. She hated to admit it, but she was learning from him. We need to find cover before nightfall, Ethan said, his voice low. Karen glanced at the darkening sky. The enemy forces have moved on, but patrols may still be nearby. Ethan nodded. Yeah. And I'd rather not find out the hard way. They pressed forward, weaving through the wreckage of fallen ships and abandoned weapons. Karen's keen senses picked up movement in the distance. She stiffened, ears twitching. Ethan noticed. What is it? She narrowed her eyes. Something ahead. Not human. Not Sari. Ethan followed her gaze. At first, he saw nothing. But then, a flicker of movement. Something low to the ground and fast. Scavenger beasts, he muttered. Great. Karen recognized them now. Native predators of this world, drawn to the scent of blood and decay. They were not intelligent, but they were dangerous in packs. Ethan exhaled sharply. We can't fight them, not with you still recovering. Karen bristled. I am not weak. Never said you were. Ethan smirked. But I'd rather not waste ammo proving a point. She couldn't argue with that. They had little ammunition, little food, and no backup. If they were caught in open ground by a pack of scavengers, survival was unlikely. Karen scanned the area and spotted a half-destroyed human transport vehicle nearby. Its metal frame was dented, but it looked stable enough. There, she pointed. We take shelter inside. Ethan followed her gaze and grinned. Now you're thinking like a human. She huffed but didn't argue. They sprinted toward the wreckage. The beasts saw them and let out sharp, clicking growls, their glowing eyes locking onto their prey. Ethan fired a few warning shots, hitting the ground near them. The creatures hesitated. That won't keep them back for long, he said. Go. Karen reached the transport first and climbed inside through a broken door. Ethan followed, slamming the metal shut behind him. For a moment, there was silence. Then, scratching, snarling, the scavengers circled the wreck, testing its weak points. Ethan sighed. Well, we made it. Sort of. Karen crouched, ears flicking as she listened. They will not leave until they are certain we are not food. Ethan sat back against the cold metal. Then I guess we wait. Karen watched him. Even now, surrounded by danger, he still looked calm. Not reckless. Just sure of himself. It was something she had begun to admire. She hesitated before speaking. You trust me now? Ethan raised an eyebrow. Yeah, shouldn't I? She considered that. A few days ago, she would have said no. But now, I do not know, she admitted. Ethan smirked. Well, you haven't tried to kill me yet, so I'd say that's progress. She frowned. Do you always make light of danger? Sometimes, he shrugged. Keeps me sane. Karen did not understand human humor, but she found herself strangely comfortable in his presence. The scratching outside grew fainter. The scavengers were losing interest. Ethan leaned his head back. We'll move at dawn. Get some rest. Karen hesitated, then nodded. She leaned against the cold metal wall, her mind still filled with questions. Why had a human risked his life for her? Why was she beginning to feel like she could trust him? And most of all, what would happen when they finally reached his people? As she closed her eyes, she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer the same warrior who had been abandoned on this battlefield. And it was because of him. Karen woke to the first light of dawn filtering through the cracks in the ruined transport. The night had been uneventful, aside from the occasional sounds of distant scavenger beasts. Ethan was already awake, crouched near the entrance with his rifle in hand. His sharp human eyes scanned the area, always alert. Karen stretched carefully, testing her body. The pain had lessened. She was healing faster than expected, thanks to the human's medical care. Ethan noticed her movement and gave a small nod. Morning, tough kitty. She let out a low growl. Do not call me that. He grinned. Makes you mad, so I'm definitely calling you that. She huffed but did not argue. She had learned that humans like to tease. It was strange, but not unpleasant. Ethan shifted his focus back to the landscape. Looks like the scavengers are gone. We should move before something worse shows up. Karen nodded and stood. Where are we going? He pointed toward the distant mountains. There's an old human supply station near those ridges. If it's still intact, we can find food, weapons, maybe even a radio. A radio? She asked. To call for help, Ethan explained. If my people pick up the signal, they might send a rescue team. Karen frowned. And what will happen to me if they do? Ethan glanced at her. "I'll make sure they don't shoot you, if that's what you're asking." She crossed her arms. "That is not an answer." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "I don't know, Karen. Maybe they'll take you as a prisoner. Maybe they'll see you're not a threat." "I am a warrior," she said firmly. "I will always be a threat." Ethan looked at her, and for once he wasn't smiling. "Not to me." She froze. The words were simple, but they made something in her chest heighten. Before she could respond, a distant sound caught her attention. A low hum, rhythmic, mechanical. Ethan cursed. Patrol drones. Karen's ears twitched. Human or Tsari. Ethan peeked through a crack in the transport's hull. Sari. Karen's claws flexed instinctively. They must be searching for survivors. Ethan pulled back, thinking fast. They'll scan the area. If they pick up heat signatures, we're done. Karen considered their options. We must move now. If they see us, we run. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. All right, let's go. They slipped out of the wreckage, moving low and fast. The landscape was open, with only a few scattered boulders for cover. Karen's heart pounded. If the drone spotted them, there would be no time to hide. Then, a high-pitched beep. "Run!" Ethan shouted. Karen bolted, her body still aching but fueled by adrenaline. The drones whirred as they changed direction, their sensors locking onto them. A red light flashed on one of the machines. Then, gunfire. Bullets sprayed the ground behind them. Ethan returned fire, taking down one drone with a well-placed shot, but two more remained. "Faster!" Ethan shouted. Karen pushed herself harder. The ridges were close, but the drones were faster. She could hear them closing in. Then, suddenly, boom. One of the drones exploded in a burst of fire. Karen skidded to a stop, shocked. She turned to see Ethan lowering the smoking grenade launcher. "Surprise," he said with a grin. The final drone hesitated, recalculating its attack. That was all the time Ethan needed. He fired again. Another explosion, and the last drone crashed to the ground in flames. For a moment, there was silence. Then Ethan let out a breath. That was close. Karen was still staring at him. "You are a reckless fool." Ethan smirked. "And yet, we're still alive." She shook her head, but a small part of her admired his courage. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous, and yet she had never felt safer beside anyone else. Ethan slung his rifle over his shoulder. "Come on. That explosion will attract attention. We need to reach the station before more of your people show up." Karen followed, but her mind was troubled. She had fought alongside many warriors before, but none had risked their lives for her like Ethan had. He was not Sari. He was not one of her people. And yet, he was something more. Ethan and Karen reached the rocky ridges just as the twin suns of the planet began to rise higher in the sky. The air was dry, carrying the distant scent of smoke and metal. Their bodies were exhausted, but they had no time to rest. The destroyed drones would not go unnoticed. More Tsari patrols would come searching soon. Ethan led the way, keeping his rifle ready as they climbed up a narrow path toward the old human supply station. Karen followed closely, her sharp eyes scanning for threats. "Are you sure this place is still here?" she asked. Ethan grinned. Only one way to find out. After another 20 minutes of climbing, they reached the top. There, hidden between the rocks, was a small metal bunker, rusted but still standing. Ethan stepped forward and pressed his hand against a scanner near the entrance. The device flickered weakly before a small green light blinked to life. The doors hissed open. "We're in," he said. Karen followed him inside. The bunker was dusty and cold, but it had supplies. Weapons, rations, and most importantly, a communications console. Ethan walked over to the console and powered it up. The old screen flickered as it searched for a signal. Karen folded her arms. "What now?" Ethan didn't look up. Now, I call for help. Karen's claws flexed. And if your people come. Ethan glanced at her. His voice was softer now. Then you have a choice. She didn't respond. Instead, she watched as he adjusted the controls and sent out a distress signal. This is Sergeant Ethan Carter, United Terran Forces. Survivors requesting immediate extraction. Coordinates attached. Respond if you copy. Static filled the room. Seconds passed. Then, Sergeant Carter, this is command. We received your signal. Stand by for extraction. Ethan sighed in relief. We're getting out of here. Karen felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, uncertainty, fear. She had fought humans before, killed them. If they recognized her as a Tari warrior, would they execute her? Take her as a prisoner? Ethan must have seen the look on her face because he spoke gently. You don't have to come with me. Karen's ears twitched. And what would I do? Stay here and wait for my own people to find me. They abandoned me once. They will do it again. Ethan nodded. He didn't try to convince her, didn't try to force a decision. He just waited. Karen closed her eyes, thinking. The Tsari way was simple. The strong survived. The weak were left behind. By those rules, she should have died on the battlefield. But she hadn't, because a human had saved her. And now he was offering her a future. Finally, she met his gaze. I am coming with you. Ethan grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. Minutes later, the sound of an approaching dropship filled the air. Karen's heart pounded as she stepped outside with Ethan, watching as the massive human ship lowered itself onto the rocky ground. The doors opened, and several human soldiers emerged, weapons raised. Ethan stepped forward, raising his hands. Easy, guys. She's with me. The soldiers hesitated. One of them, a tall woman with captain's stripes, stepped forward. Her eyes narrowed at Karen. Sorry. What's she doing here? Ethan stood firm. She fought with me. She's not our enemy. The captain studied Karen for a long moment. Karen stood tall, refusing to show fear. Finally, the captain nodded. All right, get them on board. Karen let out a quiet breath as she followed Ethan onto the ship. For the first time in her life, she was stepping into the unknown. And for the first time, she wasn't doing it alone.